Hi, my name is Jordan Isaacson. I am a chef ambassador with the New Mexico Department of Agriculture, specifically working with the Taste the Tradition logo program. I'm going to be working on an apple galette. A galette, just a French word for a really free-form pastry. I love making galettes because you can literally put anything you want in them and they don't have to look pretty. I think that's kind of like the appeal for me, is that it's like really rustic and the beauty is kind of in the imperfection here. So I've got butter that I've been chilling in the freezer for at least an hour or more. I got some flour, I got some sugar, I got some salt. Then I also have some ice water here. It's important you want to keep this whole process cold. The moment you start to melt your butter, the moment your pastry is going to fall apart. The reason that pastry gets flaky and has layers, as the butter melts in the oven as it's being baked, it releases steam, it pushes that flour up, and that's where you get those layers. If you start to melt your butter, you lose the structure, and you lose your whole structure of your pastries. A little bit of flour in, some butter. I like to do this in the food. I'm just gonna pulse it until they get like about pea-sized. Okay, so let's get my hands in here, check it out. Still got a couple of bigger chunks, so I'm gonna keep going a little bit. Yeah, much better. Okay, cool. What I'm gonna do now is just add a little bit of this ice water, about a tablespoon at a time. It's gonna start to come together. It'll make like somewhat of a rough ball. And at that point, I'm gonna work it with my hands and work water into it. You don't wanna do too much water because you'll wind up with like really loose pastry that you can't work. The key with pastry really is you don't want to overwork it either. You develop too much gluten, you wind up with tough pastry. It's not going to be as tender or as flaky as you want it to be. We got a plastic bag here. Quick little skinless air. And from here, I'm going to wash my hands and I'm going to put this in the fridge. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and prep our apples for our galette. In this bowl, I've got brown sugar, I've got cinnamon, I've got vanilla, I've got a little bit of cornstarch, I've got a little bit of lemon juice, a little bit of salt. The cornstarch is gonna kind of help thicken everything as it bakes so it doesn't turn into a runny mess. But I like to do this step ahead of time, kind of let the apples marinate kind of in this sauce so that they kind of pick up some of the cinnamon and the vanilla flavors, and then overall it will be a lot more cohesive in the end. So I'm gonna start by peeling my apples. And here's another tip. I'm gonna peel everything onto this tray so that I can just take this tray and set it aside and clean it a little bit later. It's a good way to keep your workspace clean, is to peel onto something. You can use parchment or foil. I just happen to have a tray here, so I'm gonna use the tray. You'll notice that this one underneath the skin doesn't look so good, but guess what? We're gonna cook it. It's gonna be just fine. Okay, piece aside. Take my whole mess. And I'll do that 4 times. I like to do one process of a project all at once. Think about like the assembly line methodology. So I'm going for like 1/4 inchy, something like that, right into the bowl. Getting my little peeled bits off to the side. That time of year reminds me of like getting together with friends and family. Kind of just let them do their thing, soak up the flavors, everything kind of melds. And then after that, it'll be easy peasy. We're just gonna roll out some pastry into like a really rough circle. We're gonna mound these apples in the center, brush it with some egg, brush it with some sugar, bake it, and it'll be delish. So my galette dough has been sitting in the fridge for 45 minutes to an hour. It's firmed up quite a bit, which means it's ready to roll. Like I said earlier, we want to make sure we keep the butter cold. So it's important, if it's this process takes a little bit longer for you, that you stop, you put it back in the fridge, you let it do its thing. I've got some bench flour. I'm just using all-purpose. Now, the secret to getting something round is that you want to keep it round for as long as you can. So, and when I was finishing it, I was shaping it to try to get as round as I can. And from here, I'm gonna make a cross. And I'm gonna try to be as equal as I can. And mine's coming out a little bit more rectangular, so I'm gonna try to focus on some of my problem areas. The problem areas being anything that looks like it's kind of bunched up. Like I also mentioned earlier, you can put whatever you want in a galette. Let's say you've got a whole bunch of asparagus and goat cheese and caramelized onions hanging around. You could put that in there. You got tomatoes and brie and rosemary. Do whatever you want. You know, that's a cool thing. So I'm gonna mount up my apples here. And I'm gonna try to leave, I don't know, maybe an inch border. But I'm gonna really mound them up because they will cook down. Apples are mostly water. And it looks like I might have too many apples here. So what I might do, just for myself for a snack, I might just saute them and eat them, because why not, you know? Yeah, you don't want to go too much, right? Because you'll wind up sogging out your pastry. So I'm going to pull some out just to be a little on the safe side. Okay, I have a French friend who lives up here in Santa Fe with me, and I've been over to her house a couple of times, and she's always teaching me cool new French stuff. And you know, the French have that reputation, like all their food is like super fine and hoity-toity, but in reality, like they just love to eat and they don't always care how it looks. Cool, so I got my egg wash. The egg wash is gonna kind of help with the color of the browning. Same thing with the sugar. Sugared, egg wash. I'm just gonna rinse my hands. I'm gonna put it right in the oven. Okay, so our galette is done. This is what it should look like when it's all finished. We're golden brown all the way around. Your apples are cooked. This is looking pretty perfect to me. And like I said 100 times already, the galette is all about freeform rusticness. It's not about pretty or presentation. The beauty is in imperfection. Resting things, especially pastries and breads, are really important, especially on a rack like this. It allows the air to flow underneath, and that's going to keep your bottom crispy, because if you just let it go like this, all that heat, there's all this steam underneath this, and it's going to just generate and then condense, and then you'll wind up with a soggy bottom, which is what we don't want. So I'm going to go this to there first. Here we go. And we're just gonna let it hang out 15-20 minutes. I know this is like the hardest part, to not just cut it and start eating it right now, but I promise you, you let it cool down a little bit, it's not gonna burn your mouth, and everything's gonna kind of solidify, and it's gonna eat a lot better. Okay, so our galette has fully rested. It has come down to somewhat close to room temperature. Still wanna serve it a little bit warm. So I'm gonna slide it into my cutting board here. I'm gonna cut a wedge, and remember, it's just kind of imperfect, however you wanna do it. There you go, apple galette. Sometimes I'll serve this with ice cream, sometimes I'll whip cream with maple syrup, and I'll serve it with that, and that's my favorite way to serve.